Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Ainsworth, and we're going to get into another lesson here on factoring trinomials using the technique in the last lesson called factoring by grouping. All right, there's many different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you how to factor trinomials using the technique called factor by grouping. This is part one of a two-part series. And so let's warm up here together using the FOIL method because I want to show you something here. All right, so FOIL method here. All right, first times first. All right, that's what F stands for. First times first equals first. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times 7, 21x. Inner product right here. Oh, I stands for inner product. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. And negative 1 times 7, negative 7. So let's add these. We have 6x squared. 21x take away 2x is in 19x here. And then we have a minus 7. Now what we just did is called is called multiplying. We just multiplied two binomials using what's called the FOIL method. All right. What we want to do today is reverse it. Okay. Reverse the process, which is called factoring. Okay. Factoring. What we want to do is learn how to take a trinomial, take the middle term, which is 19x here, split it into two terms, like I did here, and then go backwards and factor by grouping and get into what's called a factor pair. All right, this is called a factor pair. At least that's what I call it, a factor pair. Pair meaning two, and because we have two factors here, or a pair of two factors which multiply to the polynomial, I call it a factor pair. So how do we get from a trinomial to a factor pair? How do we do that? Okay, and that's what this lesson is all about. We're going to use factor by grouping, okay, as our technique. That's why you had to go through the first lesson, the previous one. And since you guys were really good on that the other day, I expect you guys to do this pretty well too. All right, so let me model. Here we go. What we want to do is we want to think about two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to negative 5. So we're going to play a number game first. So what two numbers multiply to 6 and add to a negative 5? So I'm going to put a times symbol here and a plus symbol here. This is the product and sum game. This is called a product, and this is called a sum. And we played the product and sum game before. So what I want you to do is think of two numbers, just put them here, that multiply to 6 and add to negative 5. And there's only a few possibilities here. If you look at the 6 first and you think factors here, I'm thinking 1, 6, 2, and 3. Those are the factors of 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now I'm going to put them in. All right, so 1 and 6. 1 times 6 is 6, but 1 plus 6 is 7 and not negative 5. So you got one of them has to be negative, right? The problem is that if you make the one negative, make a negative one, you get a negative 6 up top and we get a positive 5 down below, so that doesn't work. Even if you switch the signs, it still doesn't work. 1 plus negative 6 is negative 5, but they multiply to negative 6. So this choice is not good. So we're going to have to make a different choice. We're going to have to use 2 and 3. Now 2 times 3 is 6, but 2 plus 3 is positive 5. So to make some adjustments, all we do is make them both negative. So you're going to have to get creative here to find these two numbers, because what we're going to do is we're going to split the middle term and work backwards. Okay, so using this technique, we take the middle term, so highlight the minus 5x, and we're going to split it into two factors, negative 2x and negative 3x. So let's write that down. We're going to split the middle term, and we're going to write it in as two factors. Because again, we're working backwards here, so we're going to learn how to take a trinomial, split the middle term into two terms, creating four total terms, factor by grouping, and go backwards into a factor pair. So here we go. I'm going to x squared first. Now I'm going to split the middle term into negative 2x and negative 3x. So minus 2x, minus 3x, and then I'm going to bring down the plus 6. Let me highlight this. Now see this right here? That's the splitting that I'm talking about. Minus 2x and a minus 3x is a minus 5x. Just think of it like this. If I just put the x's in, and now you can see it. Okay, negative 2x and negative 3x is negative 5x. That's all I did, is I just split it. So I didn't really do anything too fancy. Now here's where the factor by grouping comes in. This is the first group and this is the second group. And this is our previous lesson that we did yesterday. In the first group here we have an x in common, so I need to factor it out. Now I know that x times x is x squared. I know that x times negative 2 is negative 2x, so I need an x minus 2 here. Now look carefully here, this 3x being subtracted, so it's negative. So instead of distributing out a 3, I'm going to distribute out a negative 3. And that's what I taught you about in previous lessons, that whenever you see that leading term negative, distribute out the negative. That's why we practice it so much, because we're going to use it right now. Now I know that negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2, all right, will produce positive 6, so you have to change the sign to a minus sign. And in the factoring by grouping technique, you'll see the common factor right here, the x minus 2. That's what we start off with, x minus 2 times the remaining factors, x minus 3, and that goes second. So x minus 3. So what I just did is I took a trinomial and I wrote it as a factor pair. This is what I call a factor pair. Pair meaning two factors, right? Okay, and that's what the whole lesson's all about. You want to be able to take a trinomial, split the middle term, factor by grouping, and get it into a factor pair. And to get good at anything, you got to do it a whole lot of times. So, but before we do that, let's talk about how we check this. So how do you check the factoring when you're done? How do you multiply binomials? Is what I'm asking you. How do you multiply these binomials to get back to the original polynomial? Well, you know how to do that. You did in the very beginning, right? It's called the FOIL method. All right, we did that before. So the FOIL method is it. So if we multiply these two just to check it, I'm going to check it right here. So I'm going to just repeat the problem here. Separate the answer from my checking. And I go x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. And I get x squared minus 5x plus 6. That's my check, okay, right here. So keep that in mind. How do you check the factoring? You FOIL it, okay, guys? All right, now let's get some practice here. We want to learn how to find these special numbers here. We want to learn how to split the middle term because this is the first time you've done it. So here we go. Let's do it again. What two numbers multiply to 49 and add to negative 14? So I'm going to put a times symbol here, a plus symbol here. So what two numbers multiply to 49 and add a negative 14? So you got to think about that. Now I know that 7 times 7 is 49, but I want a negative 14 sum. So I got to make them both negative. Okay, and those are the numbers that use to split the middle term. The middle term this time, though, is negative 14x. So here we go. We're going to split the middle term as a minus 7x minus 7x, and then bring down the 49. So again, you got to split the middle term into two terms. Split the middle term. Split it. Okay? So you do that. Then you do a little factor by grouping. In the first group, there's an x in common. X times x is x squared. X times negative 7 is a negative 7x. Third term is negative, so distribute out not 7, but negative 7. So negative 7 times x is negative 7x, and a negative 7 times a negative 7 gives you the positive 49. And it turns out that in factor by grouping here, just like you did in the previous lesson, that these binomials are always the same. So expect it. So that goes first. So factor out your common binomial. Multiply it by the remaining factors, x minus 7. Sometimes, like in this case, they're the same. And if they are, you could write it as one of them squared, x minus 7 squared. Most of the time, these are going to be different binomials, though, so this is only a special case. It's called a perfect square trinomial. Okay, all right, and you just kick in your previous techniques, and we're building up on techniques here. The previous lesson was all factor by grouping, and that's what's into play right here. All right, and you just continue. I mean, on the next one here, what two numbers multiply to 36 and add to 13? So what two numbers multiply to 36 and add to 13? Times symbol here, plus symbol here. The product is 36 and the sum is 13. And the factors of 36, well, there's a few of them. 1 and 36, 2 and 18, all right, 3 and 12, and 4 and 9. And obviously these two add up to 13, so you're going to choose the 4 and the 9, right? These are the possible factor pairs. All right. So what you have to do is you have to be good at your multiplication skills and your factoring, and then this is fairly easy. All right, now let's split the middle term. This time the middle term is at 13x. So we're going to split it into 4x plus 9x. So plus 4x plus 9x plus 36. Factor out an x here out of the first group. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. Let me see, 9 divides into both of these, so I'm going to factor out the 9. 9 times x is 9x. 9 times 4 is 36. Notice that the x plus 4's are the same. So you start off with the common binomial all the time. Multiply it by the remaining factors, the x plus 9. And so you have x plus 4 times x plus 9. And that's how the game is played. You just have to get good at it. Now on this one here, you don't have a middle term, so what would that middle term be if it's not there? In fact, what would that coefficient be of the middle term if there's no middle term there? I mean, think about it. What does it have to be? You know, and is it 1 or is it 0? Is it what is it? What does that middle term have to be if there's no middle term there? And the answer is it has to be 0 because 0 times x is nothing. So let's rewrite this. Let's rewrite it as x squared plus 0x minus 25. The middle term has to be 0, or the coefficient has to be 0 because it's not there, right? If it was any other number, then you would see a coefficient there. All right, so again, what two numbers multiply to negative 25 and add to 0? So now let's play this game. What two numbers multiply to negative 25 and add to 0? Well, the factors of 25 are 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. That's the only possibility. So make one of them negative. So negative 5 times 5 is negative 25, and negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So let's split the middle term. Okay, here we go. X squared plus 5x or minus 5x, it doesn't matter. I'll write it minus 5x just because it comes first over here. So minus 5x plus 5x, that's 0. Minus 25. Factor out what's in common. All right, x. And you get x times x minus 5. In the second group, there's a 5 in common, so factor out the 5. And then you'll see the common binomial, x minus 5. So let's start off with that. And then multiply it by the remaining factors, x plus 5. There we go. And that's the factorization for x squared minus 25. That's called a factor pair, or the factorization of the polynomial. And to get good at anything, you got to do more than 4 examples, everybody. Or that's just 3 examples. You have to, well, that's 4. You have to actually do a lot. Okay, to get as good as me, you got to do a lot. That's why there's classwork and then there's homework, right? Okay, so now I want you to pause and play. Okay, interact with the video, so just don't sit there and keep it going. I want you to interact with it. I want you to pause it right now and think of two numbers that multiply to negative 5 and add to 4. Okay, pause the video and write them down and interact with me. Okay, now let's see if you're right. Two numbers that multiply to negative 5 and add to 4. Let me see, the factors are 1 and 5. Well, those are the only factors of 5, so, but you got to make one of them negative. So make the one negative so you create a positive 4 down here. If the sum is positive, you want a bigger positive. All right, now let's split the middle term, this plus 4x. So here we go. So we got x squared minus x and then plus 5x. And then bring over the minus 5. Okay, so I just split the middle term. Now what you want to do is factor out the common factors. So let's factor out an x out of the first group, and you get x times x minus 1. Factor out a 5, and you get 5 times x minus 1. Distribute back through to check. Distribute, 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 distribute to check. Always distribute to check. All right, keep that in mind. All right, now the common binomial is right there. It's x minus 1. So we start off with that. So let's take x minus 1, multiply it by the remaining factors, x plus 5. Okay, and that's how it's done. So what I want you guys to do is pause and play through the video. All right, if you think you can do the next one, do the whole thing and then press play and review it and check it and interact with me through the lesson. And that's the best way you can do it instead of just sitting there copying down a bunch of answers, okay? Interact. So in this one here, there's no middle term. So let's insert a 0x here and think what two numbers multiply to negative 100 and add to 0. So pause the video until you complete it and then check. All right, so hopefully you picked negative 10 and 10. They multiply to a negative 100 and they add to 0. So x squared plus 0x minus 100. Let's split the middle term. X squared plus 10x minus 10x minus 100. The order of the middle terms doesn't matter, so if you reverse this, no big deal. Your answer is going to be the same. And you get x times quantity x plus 10. And then here you got to distribute out negative 10, so negative 10 times x plus 10. Factor out the common factor, all right, which is x plus 10. All right, multiply it by the remaining terms, x minus 100. Excuse me, x minus 10. There we go. All right, now try it again. Think what two numbers multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 6. All right, pause the video, give it a shot. All right, factors of 16 are 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. We want them to add or subtract to negative 6. So I'm going to choose 2 and 8, make the bigger one negatives. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16, and 2 plus negative 8 is negative 6. So here we go. We've got x squared minus 6x minus 16. Got to split the middle term. X squared minus 2x minus, plus 2x because it's positive, minus 8x minus 16. Factor out an x. Factor out a negative 8. And now we see the common binomial. So we start off with x plus 2. Multiply it by the remaining factors, x minus 8. All right, now on the next one here, what two numbers multiply to 12 and add to negative 7? Pause the video and give this one a shot now. Okay, so factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. 3 and 4 add up to 7, so I'm going to make both of them negative. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Negative plus a negative is a bigger negative. So on this one here, we've got x squared minus 7x plus 12. My goal is to split the middle term every time, so I get x squared minus 3x minus 4x plus 12. Factor out an x. Factor out a negative 4. My common binomial is this time is x minus 3, so we start off with that. All right, multiply it by the remaining terms, x minus 4. All right, doing well. Okay, now on the next one here, you got to be thinking what two numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6. So pause the video, write them down. What two numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6? All right, and hopefully you chose 3 and 3. So here we have, I'm going to split the middle term here. So we have x squared plus 3x plus the 9. I'm only doing over here because I'm running out of room on this example. So I'll jump back to the right side in just a minute. So factor out an x. factor out of 3. And then my common binomial is x plus 3, so you start off with that. Multiply it by the remaining factors, x plus 3. In this case, they're the same. This is another good example of where you can write it as one of them squared. Okay, it's called a perfect square trinomial. Okay, almost done. What two numbers multiply to -7 and add to -6? So what two numbers multiply to -7, add to -6? Pause the video and give it a shot. All right, so let's rewrite the polynomial here, and let's split the middle term. So we have x squared. Oh, wait a minute. Back up, Jeff. Okay, what two numbers multiply to -7? Well, 7's prime, so the only factors are 1 and 7. So put them in, make the bigger one negative. Okay, so I'm going to write it as x squared plus x minus 7x. 1x minus 7x is -6x, and then minus 7. Distribute out an x. Distribute out a -7. All right, and then you go for it and you factor out the common factor, which is x plus 1. Multiply it by the remaining terms, x minus 7. Once you do this a bunch of times, you'll be as fast as I am. And these are like 30-second questions or 60-second questions when you get good. Okay, so let's do the last one. Okay, what two numbers multiply to -16 and add to 6? Okay, factors of 16. 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. The numbers that add or subtract to 6 are these two. So you try 2 and 8, but you want a -16, right? So actually make the smaller one negative, the bigger one positive. 8 minus 2 is 6, or 8 plus a -2 is 6. -2 times 8 is -16. So on the last one here, we're going to split the middle term. So we have x squared minus 2x plus 8x minus 16. Distribute out an x. Distribute out an 8. And then you're done almost. You got x minus 2 times the remaining terms, your x plus 8. And that is how you do it, my friends. The only thing you need to do is a lot of homework problems, because doing it just 10 times with me is not enough. To get that good, as good as I am, you got to do a lot more. So, because I've done thousands. So give your homework a good shot, do your best, and I'll see you in my next lesson. This is Mr. Ainsworth. I'll see you then.